Live, all right. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the Town of Groveland Planning Board meeting on September 10th, 2024. Can I motion to open?
So motioned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. All right. On the agenda tonight, we have a lot of people here. Welcome, everyone. I am new to this board as the chairman, so bear with me. I will try to work with everyone as best as possible. So we'll go through this, get through this.
I take that to mean you weren't here the last time they brought this up?
I was, and when it was tonight, yeah, when we,
Just curious.
yep, I was. I've been on the board for 3 or 4 years now, and this is my first year, only my second or third meeting as chair, so. Yeah, thank you. We'll see. I got this and Garrison Street, it's like, yeah. All right. We are going to ask for a motion for open the public hearing.
So motioned.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Read it.
Yep. All right, public hearing, new 181R School Street, a hearing in accordance with the MGL, Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81T, the Town of Groveland subdivision rules and regulations, and Article 14 of the Groveland General Bylaws, to hear the application of Groveland Redevelopment LLC, care of Louis Minicucci Jr., 231 Sutton Street, Suite 1B, North Andover, 01845, requesting approval of a 6-lot division, definitive subdivision plan labeled 181R School Street, Groveland, Massachusetts, and associated stormwater management and land disturbance permit. The site is located in the residential 2 zoning district. The proposed subdivision is located at 181R School Street, Groveland, Mass. 01834. The assessor's map 34, parcel 13. All right, we are going to open this up. I want to, we have a lot of people here, talk about it real quick. First thing, all of the paperwork that we have for 181 School Street is on the website, so I encourage you all to please go on there and read through the materials. There are a lot of good materials, environmental assessments, there's plans, things like that, to just please read through that, because then you'll get a better idea. We understand, the reservations of building new units within the town, so this will give you a pretty good layout. There's a summary. We have our own internal third-party engineering company that will review this as well. That has not happened yet, so this is not something that's going to happen tonight. We are not going to approve anything tonight. This has a lot. We also have bylaws that we need to have feedback from all of our town boards to get their review as well. That has not happened yet. So until any of that happens, nothing's going to be signed off on tonight. So, but we will review everything. We will look through it all. And I will allow for some public comment, but I'm going to have public comment at every stage of this. Every time we meet, it's open to anybody, because now you can go back, hear what we have people say tonight, go back, think about it, and then come back again another meeting and talk more. Because there is always new updates going to the project. We have some new emails that we've received, for or against for the project. So we take those into consideration as well. We haven't discussed this new plan amongst ourselves at all yet. So we will we'll go through the process and go from there and see what happens. So with that, I think let's hear from the applicant first. They can give their presentation, and then we can go from there. So, ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, staff that are here tonight. For the record, my name is Scott Cameron. I'm the owner of the Moore and Cameron Group with a place of business at 25 Canosa Ave in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and I'm a professional civil engineer. And thank you for having us tonight. I am excited to be here for this process tonight. And if I'm so inclined, I also thank all the people from the public that come out tonight to these meetings. I do embrace this process, and I think it is an important part of what makes us us in this area. So I do appreciate that, and I look forward to presenting this project and answering your questions and hopefully alleviating any concerns about the project as we go through this process of vetting the design. So thank you. So with that, I really appreciate the table setting, Mr. Chair. Great job so far. It makes my job a little bit easier. My hope tonight is to give you an overview of the project, kind of walk you through. We were here about a year ago with a preliminary plan. We do use that process, in this case, to get feedback from you, from the public. We do listen to that. We do our best to do what we can to alleviate that. Some of the concerns when we did the preliminary plan were the number of lots driving the shape resulted in some kind of funky shaped lots. The zoning's since been changed to make them a little bit more normal in size. We heard concerns about stormwater management. The property does slope from School Street back, and I'll go through that during this presentation. And I think, what excites me most about this is, most subdivisions are going to ultimately be single-family home sites, which are definitely a need in our state and in our region. We're very short of housing, and it doesn't take very much looking on the internet to see plenty of information behind that. But what's really unique about this project is that it's not just single-family homes. We're actually proposing a diversity of housing. So single-family homes and a couple of two-family homes with this application, which is good from our perspective because a single-family home price point is oftentimes out of reach for most families. But the two families present an opportunity to be a reachable first home for young families and things and folks of that nature. So we don't see that often on these subdivisions, and I'll walk you through that. But I am very excited about this application and checking those boxes for a diversity of housing stock. So as you mentioned, it is in the R2 zoning district. The zoning here is 30,000 square foot lots, as you know, and 150 feet of frontage for your single-family dwellings. And when you do a two-family, it's 40,000 and 200 feet of frontage. We don't have any wetlands on this site, and I'm going to walk you through our process. The plans are kind of set up in the process through which we go through our vetting and design process. So right out of the gate, we did a survey of the property. This is topography and boundary. During this process, we are investigating all the utilities that support the project, the water, the public water in the street, the public sewer in the street, electric, communications, and if present, stormwater management. We also conducted extensive soil testing on the site, a big part of our design work. Oh, is there a light? I'm not going to touch anything.
Right over here.
EJ's back here.
Brilliant. Thank you. The soil investigations help us understand factors such as water table, our soil type and consistency, which plays into what we can do with infiltrating water into the ground, and evaluating any of the conditions of the site. In this case, it's a wooded lot with developed land all around it. The Whitestone Village, which I assume a lot of folks are here from that community, wraps most of the property, and then there's developed single-family homes on the other side. So everything around this is developed for some sort of residential use. It has frontage on School Street. The orientation of the plans, I kept the street at the bottom of the plan, as you see here. North is actually more to your right, so School Street's kind of a north-south orientation. So I'll talk mainly to the plan orientation as we're going through this to make things a little bit easier. So the subdivision process, as you're well aware of, it is a state statute that your community adopted, a subdivision control law that enables landowners to create access to their land for development of homes. In this case, we are proposing a 575-foot-long road that's measured from School Street to the end of the cul-de-sac. And the 6 house lots, that street would create the frontage for the 6 lots on that are going to access through that street. It would ultimately be our intention that the street would, because it complies with the subdivision regulations, would be adopted as a public road. The typical process, we don't have any intentions for it to remain private. We can vet that process as we go through this, but our intention would be that the geometric and construction specifications for this road are going to meet the town standard, and thereby could be accepted as a public road eventually. Going, starting from Lot 1, which is the bottom left corner. And I'm just gonna, so starting in Lot 1 here, this is a 40,000 square foot lot with 316 feet of frontage. The next 4 lots all have 150 feet of frontage and are 30,200 square feet, 30,030 square feet, 32,800 square feet, 32,700 square feet, and then Lot 6 here, 40,000 square feet and about 316 feet of frontage. We end up with, because of the shape of the parcel, some land that we didn't attribute to a lot. We didn't include it here. We kept it separate as Parcel A. We did get a comment back from staff about what our intention would be for that lot. We're open to input on that as to what happens with it. There's a fair market value for it. We could deed it with one of the lots in the development. We could deed it as an open space piece to be maintained by the road itself. We could deed it to another interested party that might want to own it. So we're open to ideas for that. It's kind of a side effect of the geometric requirements of the zoning bylaw and the subject control law that sometimes we end up with just excess land. And so that's that piece. And it's not very large. It's only, it's just a little under 4,000 square feet of land area. Walking through, so we included information here. We're also applying for the land disturbance permit for this. A big part of construction is managing your project during construction. There's a period of time where you have cleared the trees, you've altered the land, you have exposed soil. How are we managing that? This project would be subject to all the federal statutes for stormwater pollution prevention that are very commonplace these days, as well as your town bylaws and oversight. In past projects, I don't expect this to be any different. Your consultant has also been with the project throughout construction to help oversee it. So eyes from the community's representatives are also on the work. In this case, we took some time to size temporary sediment forebays or temporary retention ponds to make sure we're controlling that. Ultimately, there's a very extensive specifications book that goes with construction on what to do to manage all the procedures, specification things that you need to do to effectively manage the construction project. I included areas for temporary soil stockpiles, erosion controls, and most importantly, we did do our best to preserve a wooded buffer around the perimeter of the project, which was another piece of feedback that we got during the preliminary process. Now, what's interesting with subject control is to create the road and the lots. Most town regulations, and yours included, want us to demonstrate, well, how would they be built? So it puts us in a situation where we design the entire project, we design homes, but of course, the project is just to build the road. The lots are vacant. Then they sell them to a buyer, so either a homeowner who's going to build their own house, or maybe a builder, build a spec house, something like that. But that goes through a building permit process. There's an architect and other things. So we don't have the benefit at this stage of the permitting process, which is day one with you, of knowing what the house designs will be. So what do? Well, we still have to make sure everything's engineered properly, and we're accounting for development of those properties. So what we did is we assumed larger house footprints, larger driveways, more clearing than what we realistically expect the development to be. So we're accounting for all that information and data in our stormwater management design. That's an important part of the work that I do, that your consultant, TEC, will be reviewing on your behalf. So we are accounting for not only the road, the sidewalks, and that work, we're accounting for the homes, the driveways, and larger yards around the homes. So this plan, which is we entitled Site Layout Plan, this has the information on the street trees. This has information on, obviously, how you're going to develop the lots on it. I want to make note that another feature I like about this is we arranged the home that would be up on School Street and most visible towards School Street. And it's also aligned with the homes on School Street. This is a good architectural technique, planning technique to create a harmonious street line along School Street. Right now, the site itself is just kind of like a mess of, it hasn't been touched. It's been partially cleared, so it's kind of a mess. But this would infill a home, and we will orient the front door to face School Street there. Even though the access will be through the driveway off the new road, it will appear as a home fronting on School Street, which is a nice corner lot feature we included, and that was a request from staff at an earlier meeting. Moving along. The next plan gets into our grading and drainage. This is the bulk of our engineering work. We spent a tremendous amount of time on stormwater management, the grading of the site, and notably so, one of the more common points that we heard from the preliminary process was concerns about stormwater management. The slope of the property goes from School Street at about elevation 100 to the top of the plan, which would be west, at about elevation 70. So about a 30-foot grade change across the property, and everything slopes down that direction. And there are small bits of the property that might go, more to the southeast. The bulk of it goes to the southwest. You have some little areas that go kind of the northeast, and a little bit that goes out to School Street. So we're counting, and we're getting into the nitty-gritty of where water goes now when we're looking at the stormwater management. And one of the best ways we can ensure that we don't have any issues with stormwater is we just don't let it off the property. How do we do that? So in this case, when we were looking at the stormwater management, we're designing a roadway. As rainfall lands on the property, on the roadway, on the homes, it's going to drain towards that pavement. So the first thing is catch basin grates, which we're familiar with. We see those. Hopefully nobody's dropped their keys down them before. But that's intercepting the water coming down the road. We're treating that water through proprietary means, and we're bringing that into an infiltration system. The soils on site are very good. They're conducive to accepting water, to put it back into the ground, and then this would overflow, go back out into the street. Another set of catch basins, down to another basin, infiltrate it, and slowly release. So we're capturing and we're putting into the ground the majority of the stormwater runoff that lands on this property. And when I say the majority, we captured the yards too for a good portion of this, all the way around, through the roof lines, coming around the basin, all the way up through here. All of this is ending up back in the road. So we're just not letting the water go off the property. But what about down at the end? It keeps going. Well, what we did, instead of letting this continue to slope down, we are proposing to, we're going to excavate a little bit through here to build the road, excavate through here, and we're going to fill. Yes, I am using a pointer. I can't really, it's hard in the Zoom. I saw that message pop up. Let me see if I can do both here. All right, for those on the online, okay, we'll use this here. So we fill this up so that the cul-de-sac itself is a low point. So if the basins fail, it's going to fill up the road, right? Instead of letting that go out. So some fail-safes built into this to ensure that we're not letting the water go out. Even in a catastrophic situation, there's a lot of redundancy built into the design. Your consultant's going to go through all that in a lot of detail. As far as the slope of the road, I have been talking about the grade change. The road itself isn't very steep, as it turns out. We're well within the vertical design parameters of the subdivision regulations, 30 mile per hour design speed. It's relatively straight. There's not a lot of vertical curvature of this. We have slopes from flat, so we come up a little bit at School Street. So cars that are exiting onto the street are at more or less a flat elevation, so we're not having to go uphill to exit. It's flat and tipping down a little bit back towards School Street. That helps with your cars getting in and out of the property. And then we're looking at 3.3% slope, 4.5 maxing, 4.3, and we carry that through. It's your normal sidewalk slope. It's under that. So we're relatively flat with the construction of the road. And that's more or less following the existing centerline topography. So we're trying to balance. We have a little bit of cut here and a little bit of fill here. So we're trying to minimize earthwork, and that's another important aspect to getting the work done quickly. We don't want a massive excavation project where we're moving dirt around for months upon months. This should be relatively quick because there's not a whole lot of earthwork going on.
Quick, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go back up a little bit here and talk a little bit about the documents in your package. Okay, I'm just going to the cover sheet because this shows kind of the context of the property. So as far as utilities go, there is public water available, there is public sewer available. Because of the elevation of this property, each home would have its own private ejector pump. Those would pump into a common force main, and that goes back up to School Street. Again, this is typical when we have these situations, but your engineering staff, your engineering team will review all that and make sure they're satisfied with it. And there's electric available, of course, and communications. We're not making any connections to any closed drainage, so we don't have any connections. We're controlling and managing the stormwater within the property. There could be, we do have overflows and we do have mechanisms to, in those extreme precipitation events to, let a little bit of water out, but we're spreading it out and we're letting that, again, the volumes and the rates are all significantly reduced that are coming off the property. So if there are any existing water issues, the driveway for Whitestone is back here.
That's right, yeah, that's above Paul.
There's fortunately no dwellings directly here, but I would expect after construction that conditions would be better. As far as transportation, I did include in your packets information on transportation. Single-family dwellings, on average, generate a little under 10 cars per day. That's trips per day for your average single-family home. This is the Institute for Transportation Engineering data it's very well accepted. There's a ton of data in single-family homes. So what does that translate for us? So based on 8 homes, and we assumed everything to be a single family, even though the 2 families might generate a little less traffic, again, conservative, we're talking about 75 total trips per day, so it's about 32 cars in and 32 cars out, plus or minus on your weekdays. It's about the same on your Saturdays and a little bit less on Sundays, 68. On the weekdays, which is the most noticeable time when people are commuting to work, your 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., we're talking about six total vehicle trips in that hour. Most of those are going to be exiting, and in the evening peak, about 8 returning. So it's a very low volume, especially on School Street, which is a major collector road. We also measured sight lines. We looked at a 40 mile per hour design speed, which calls for a stopping sight distance. So this is a car parked at the intersection, their sight line to feel comfortable making a maneuver out onto the main road calls for 305 feet, and we're providing greater than 500 feet of sight distance in both directions. School Street's relatively straight. There's no issues with sideline along this corridor. The police department did look at this. We did get comment back that they were satisfied with that they had no concerns about sight distance. We also measured and looked at intersection sight distance, which is a car driving to ensure that if somebody does pull out, they don't need to brake, so they'd be able to maintain speed. That's more conservative. That's looking for 445 feet of sight line, which again, we're exceeding in both directions. So I don't expect the proposed intersection with this minor road would have any impact at all on the main street. Not noticeable because of the low volumes and plenty of sight line. Now, we are requesting 2 waivers. We talked about these a little bit at the preliminary process. And with waivers under the subject control law, we check every other aspect of the regulations. Your engineering consultant's going to review that and make sure that I didn't miss anything and that, you're having representation on that side. We are asking for a waiver to reduce intersection to intersection separation from 400 feet to 300 feet. And there's a couple things we look at, mainly is this going to create any safety issues on the public way with respect to traffic? Based on the sight lines, the very low traffic volumes, we don't believe there's any risk at all of any issues with traffic. This isn't an intersection that's being proposed on a sharp curve where you would have sightline issues. It's a straight road, it's wide, it's clear. It's also consistent with the neighborhood, and I did include on here, so you can see from Georgia to Ann Street, 300 feet. The waiver we're asking for is from Ann Street to our proposed road, 300 feet, exactly consistent with that street line. Going just down on the other side, 217 feet between Wilbert and Doris. And then 320 feet from Carilda to Abbott. So this is also typical of the neighborhood. We're not asking for anything that's unique or different in the neighborhood. It's already like this here. So we're not creating a situation that's different that might create confusion on the public road. It's typical, it's expected. People are used to it there because it's consistent with the neighborhood. So we are requesting a waiver for that. The second waiver we're requesting is a waiver really, I'm going to go back to the stormwater management here. This waiver is really about our efforts to implement sustainable stormwater management and construction practices in all of our designs. Your bylaws, state and federal regulations are all promoting this, pushing this. It's been part of our cultures as civil engineers for more than 2 decades, but there's a lot of focus on sustainability, notwithstanding, everything we're feeling with, climate change and perceived more intense rainfall, all of these things. We are very mindful to that. So the second waiver we're asking for, which is hard on subdivisions because we have a town specification for constructing a road, and that is pretty typical. It's with the pavement, it's asphalt, it's curbing, it's sidewalks, it's very linear design. There's not a whole lot of creativity to it. But where we can, I believe, take advantage of some sustainable measures is by making these sidewalks, which again, close to 600 feet of sidewalk, 5 feet wide. It's not a small amount, making that a porous pavement, a permeable pavement. So effectively, it's going to function the same as a lawn, or better, actually, from what I've seen with these built. So we're asking for a waiver to modify the paving specification from normal pavement to porous pavement for the sidewalks. And why sidewalks? There's no vehicles on them that are going to compact them. You're typically not sanding them. They require very low maintenance, if any at all. I wouldn't feel comfortable asking for that for the road, because ultimately, as I said, we're looking for this to go become a public road eventually, which would go through a town meeting process. If I was a DPW director, I wouldn't want anything to do with that because I don't have the budget to maintain that. So the sidewalk, we think, is a relatively minimal request that checks a box of doing whatever we can to implement sustainable design measures into the project. What else are we doing? Well, we're trying to take advantage of a stormwater design principle of keeping things as close to an existing condition as possible. Obviously, we're taking a forested lot and we're changing it to single-family homes. It's how every single-family home in town got to be that way at some point. Today, so there's a change, right? So today, what we try to implement are ways to spread out the stormwater burden. So instead of a single centralized collection point that, if that goes, that's all you're relying on, we are spreading it out. So each one of the house lots, we've fitted, we have the two basins that I mentioned earlier for the road, this one will collect the water from these 2 homes. But each of these 4 homes, the 3 on the right and lot 1 here, will go to a bioretention. So this is a shallow, planted, just depression in the yard. So it's a landscape feature. And we're going to bring our roof runoff to those areas. Roof runoff is clean. We don't have to worry about all the pollutants that are on a road that come off the cars. We're going to take that roof runoff, put it into these basins, and promote infiltration. And also, just because they're planted, you get plant root uptake. So they're really effective at managing that roof runoff, which oftentimes goes unmitigated. It's usually left to just run off because we don't need to treat it. And if you can manage it in other areas, you don't do anything with roofs. So we did incorporate these throughout all these house lots, and you'll notice that we situated them kind of between the dwellings. So the other little multi-purpose of them is to create some screening between the lots. So we're keeping them entirely within, so Lot 1 is all within Lot 1, so we don't have any property ownership maintenance issues, but we're putting them in a place where we can create a little bit of that separation between the lots. And that would help prevent, creeping of, patios or pools or whatever as people start to encroach on their neighbors' lot lines. So we also have that little benefit, and they look nice. So if you can imagine this with trees planted on both sides in kind of a uniform, harmonious manner, not at planting height, but, in 10 years, and those trees have grown up, and now you have 6-inch caliper trees on the site, it's going to look like a very nice neighborhood, and these basins will be fully established at that point. So we're trying to spread this around. These are infiltrating, of course, so we're infiltrating throughout the whole property instead of at one point, and that also has other benefits, which I'm happy to get into deeper, but that might be a college course at some point. So again, I don't have much more to present other than I do want to thank you for the time tonight. I know we have a lot of people here. There's probably a lot of questions. You have probably a lot of questions. It's our hope to take night. We have we did wait more than 7 months since the preliminary plan, so we have 135 days on this application, which is a good amount of time to go through it, vet it. I know we funded the peer review already, so your consultant is funded, so we pay for that to review on your behalf. And we're looking forward to getting this process underway with you, starting right now. So back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. What's over here? Does anyone have any questions up here? You guys have any right off the bat?
Think of anything right off?
No. Did you have any outstanding?
Nothing right out of the gate, no.
I have a question.
Not yet. We're going to talk through the board first, and then I'll end up opening it up for public comment.
I have a question about the.
I actually am the board.
Well, it just says Dad's Cool Pro 13, Wally, so I couldn't tell that was you.
That is totally accurate. But anyway, but thank you. Wally Sorensen. Still, I've been listening to this, and I see the plan presentation. Is this Mr. Needy's project?
Say that again, Wally. We couldn't hear you.
Is it Mr. Needy's project?
Mr.
Tom Needy?
Nope.
Who's up? No, it's just the Needy Moore Group.
Nope.
Is that
More
what
in
I'm seeing on the
Camden.
plan?
More in
Oh,
Camden.
Moore County. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. When you mentioned it on the process that you're just building a road, is there not a developer or builder assigned to this project yet?
So the present plan right now is to permit and then construct the road. There very well will be a builder involved at some point, but right now, Groveland Redevelopment LLC intends to build the road and sell the lots. So that could be to a homeowner, or as I mentioned in my presentation, or to a builder.
Okay. That presents a historic case and problem where you may came in and build a road, and then we have a definitive plan and a memorandum of decision that does not follow with each of the lots. And basically on 6 lots, you would have 6 different developers. Now, there's a very famous subdivision in town, all of you may remember, Center Place, where the planning board had its largest enforcement action in the town's history because of that very idea. So I would personally, as one member, not allow that to happen a second time, because we had multiple builders. No one ended up being in charge of the subdivision. You had a road that was built, and then even though the memorandum was passed on to each lot sale, they're not developers, some of them, they're not builders, all full-time. And it became a very large problem. So if you're filing a subdivision plan for a definitive, it includes the building of the houses. So you're gonna have to fix that little problem, and someone is gonna have to be on the hook for this. Also, the other problem that comes back into play, which also did there in other subdivisions, is, there were certain milestones that occur with the development of the road. And then later we have the as-built and everything else that goes on with that. Sunset Place is the second subdivision where there were too many cooks in the stew, so to speak, and it became a 10-year project trying to just get a set of as-built on a 4-lot subdivision. So as far as the road goes, it definitely looks like it's cleaned up from the last operation that you have in there. When you mentioned the tree buffer zone, how deep is that buffer zone?
The Chair, we try to manage 20 to 25 feet on average or greater.
Okay, and how is that buffer zone going to be protected?
I think that's to be determined. I think that's a conversation to be had, and we're open
Okay.
to the board's, input on that. If we want
Okay.
to talk about any
The second-
covenants that you want to work
Okay,
in.
the second thing that occurred on a couple subdivisions, but back to Center Place for a second, was that there was a very protected conservation and no-build zone on the left side, which was a conservation, and on the right side, if those of you familiar with the subdivision. And because there were 3 different builders on the first group of 10 homes that went in there, there ended up being, as I mentioned, too many cooks for the stew. And it appeared that within a very short period of time in that tree protected buffer zone, everyone seemed to have been issued upon closing a chainsaw and a swimming pool. And in particular lots, hundreds of feet of tree line that was supposed to be protected were eliminated. Now, the good news is that was the planning board's enforcement action, and a lot of them had to put the forest back at a very big expense, and they weren't putting little saplings in. So that's something that has changed with the board, so there are markers that are gonna have to go up for protecting any kind of buffer zone. They are marble and base, they have plaques on them that go in, and you can get a, conservation actually has a pretty good copy of what those are required. And any doubt, go on, zip down to Center Place and go look at the left side of the street right now. So those would have to go in. Keep in mind the planning board has the authority over a buffer zone because you really don't know. I mean, this is a good sketch you got there, but one tree may come down, or this may have to happen, or are you on sewer on this or septic? I may have missed that.
This is on sewer.
Okay, good. So less disturbance. So that if an increase in the buffer zone around the perimeter is necessary, that may occur. It'd be great to get that mapped out and tagged so that you don't have to go replant trees at some point in time. The multifamily on a single family zoning area, you met the requirement for it. That's an interesting concept. What was the value of the homes that you have projected for this development, looking at the marketing of what's going on in Groveland these days?
Through the chair, I think I want to address a couple things while he's talking about Dad's Cool Pro. I love it. This is, first off, I'm sad to hear that you've had these problems in the past, but I also appreciate the input because this is how we do these projects better in the future. I've certainly heard and seen all this before. I've been called into plenty of sites with exactly these situations. And I would probably defer to staff and you guys on, as we go through this process, talking about covenants and conditions that would help to ensure protection against this. I sure as heck don't want my name on that either. I take a lot of care in the work I do in handing that off. So I appreciate the things we can do to ward that off. However,
Well, the covenant issue becomes a problem of enforcement
does,
later, once the homes are occupied. So this is where the planning board is in the driver's seat with the developer. And this is why I caution the board, and we'll have a further discussion on that, of why exactly we don't want the concept, not the plan at the moment, but the concept of you build a road and it's a free-for-all. Not a good idea. Now, the solution to that, could that happen? Yes. It would require, to the board, cash bonds for every single builder that came in to make sure that the milestones are complete. Because that's where you really do run into a serious problem, where there's not one developer and builder on the hook. So the only way the board to counter that, and again, we could have a further discussion on this, but just so everybody knows, is that each individual builder that was in there would have to put down a substantial, probably 6 figures plus, of a type of cash bond to have on hand, because if the things that were supposed to go on that lot, like the buffer zone, or tree line, or something else didn't come into play. And then who's putting up the surety, which in this case would also have to be cash, because you're not getting lot releases for each individual because you're selling them off. Who's going to be in charge of that? Because you go through the milestones of the construction of the road and the inspections and the binder coat, and then the finished coat, and then the drainage, the trees, the finished trees, street lights, all of that. Who's in charge of that? Do you guys have a person yet in mind for that?
I don't know if that's a question for me, or that's really, I think you guys.
Well, I guess you're doing the presentation, so.
As far as overseeing construction on behalf of the town, that's typically the town's consultant. As far as managing the construction of the
We
project.
would oversee it. Who's responsible for it? So you're gonna build a road, okay? So which means, and it may not be you, but there is someone that is on this application that will be in charge of the project, putting up the surety, and be fiscally responsible for every single thing that needs to be done. Who is that?
Groveland Redevelopment LLC.
Okay, so that, and then that person is planning on just selling the lots off to the highest bidder? So who's gonna be in charge to see to make sure that the subdivision, if approved, is completed as the decision, the memorandum of decision is issued on each item?
If I might, Mr. Chair, Eric Loth from Groveland Redevelopment. So I'm the principal sponsor, the developer, I guess you would call it. The parent company that I work for, and you may know the name a little bit better, is Minco Development. We're based in North Andover. So I grew up in North Andover. I still live there. Our company's been there, been in business for over 40 years. We were the ones that 3 or 4 years ago brought forth, the previous 40B looking development. After a while, we realized that really wasn't going to fit in this location. So we came back with something we thought made a lot more sense and fit a lot better into Groveland, and we still knew there was a need for. But I guess I want to make sure and reassure all the board members and everybody here that we take a lot of pride in what we do. Most of the projects that we build, we do hold long-term. Most of what we do is larger apartment complexes. But we've built over 3,000 housing units, whether that be condominiums, townhouses, apartments in North Andover, Newburyport, Andover, basically whole area. So I can appreciate the concern because I've seen that a lot of places too. You get some out-of-towner, so to speak, that comes in and they just want to make a quick buck. And they get in, they get out, and they screw everything up. They don't connect pipes. And I just wanted to let everybody, that's really not us. We're only as good as the last project that we've done. Every project we do, our bigger projects, we go to town and we'll ask the planning board or city council, come take a ride with us. Come look at our last project, whether it was done 5 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, because we're still proud of them and they still look good and they still function. And if there's a problem, we go back and fix it. So we won't be gone a month later, 6 months later, something like that. So I can appreciate it, but.
So why not assign one of your developers and keep it in-house instead of you can still have potential, buyers for Joe, Sally, new couples that want to go in and have you build a house there. Okay, but why not keep it in-house? And the plan that you submitted before, it wasn't that it didn't fit. Quite honestly, it was a disastrous plan, overzealous development, and wasn't really worth the paper written on, because you guys totally ignored the Groveland subdivision control law and actually violated the Nantucket case. So I'm glad that you're not presenting that plan. And yes, this one looks much better. I'll give you credit for that. Okay, but that other plan had a lot of problems, and that's why it was rejected. And the planning board doesn't really get into a habit of rejecting them. I've been on the board coming up 32 years, and I can only say there's probably been a handful that have been rejected. We've seen a few withdrawn, but that's for another day. But I would suggest that since you are and you do what you do, you should assign a builder for this and keep it the way you said, because it's less issues, less problems. Imagine if you have 6 homeowners coming in to get a house and they don't know how to build a road, a street, or get anything done, and things that they have to do on their own individual lot, and they have to put up a lot of money and buy the house at the same time. And building lots of homes in Groveland, like other surrounding communities, are really coming up in price. And that's an increased burden on the future citizen that we're responsible for as well. Our current citizens, that's who we work for. And the future citizens, protecting them during this development. So something that you can work around in-house. We don't need an answer on that right now. But it has been a problem in a few subdivisions, and the board will have to discuss very large stopgap measures to prevent those kind of things from happening again. But the simplest thing is just assign a reputable builder developer to it, and then there's no issue with those kind of things.
So
Suggestion.
I appreciate the comments, and just to answer one of the questions, our plan right now is at the very least to stay involved, build the road, and complete the lots before we'd think of selling any of them off. So we will be responsible, we will be involved all the way through that process. Just for us, the economics of building homes doesn't really work for us, but we do want to stay involved, build the road, and do everything involved with the lots, and then sell the finished lots. I've talked to a couple of builders already that said, I'll take all of them together, so that might alleviate the board's concerns, but I don't know yet until we get to that point. So, thank you.
I think if I could further, it is our first meeting, and I'd like an opportunity to probably talk through with staff and look on precedent, recent subdivision decisions that you've issued, and make sure this is in line, any issues you had on those prior ones, that we alleviate those with this one, and just keep it fair and equal to, things you've done in recent past that maybe was a success. So let's learn from it and make sure that we keep things fair and equal, so.
Agreed, and that's why we have these meetings.
Yep.
Right, that's why it's not a one-time thing. And Wally, thank you. That's one of the benefits of having someone like Wally, who's been around a long time, to have the history of the town with that. So, thank you. I appreciate it. Quick question for me was, when you talk about the redevelopment, are you doing all the way through to grading and drainage, or are you leaving just a lot to build? How far into the build?
So.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Or unless
Yep.
he knows.
Absolutely. So, again, this is going to distill down to your process and what you typically do. In my experience, we typically want to have the road up to binder, so it's stabilized, all of your supporting infrastructure is installed, so that, when the builder comes in to do the house, they're connecting to the utility service stubs and they're ready to go. So all that work is in place. It is not common to do the finished paving, oftentimes the trees, and the finish work until the very end, because you don't want the house lot construction to damage or destroy that. So, the worst thing is you have a freshly paved road, and then a year later, you're milling it and redoing it. It's a huge waste of resources and goes against really, really every sustainable construction technique we try to use, not to mention the economic impacts to the developer. So in that case, whatever isn't finished, and that usually includes, your as-built plans, I heard mention of that, setting of monuments, peer review, there's a cost to go through the public acceptance process. That's usually all included within the amount that's set for the bond, and that's before release of, whether it's an occupancy permit or a building permit or whatever that is. I think we can work through and make sure that is satisfactory to your board, that you have those protections in place. And then the developer, the subdivider, is ultimately the one that's responsible for finishing that. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may add, this is not new. We have developments that have mortgaged and sold lots in our ongoing subdivisions. We've also seen that in Billis Way and Katy Lane, where we issue a subdivision and they sell off those certain lots to another developer to actually build the house. So it is not uncommon to see something like this come forward. There's certainly some issues from the past that we've learned from, like Mr. Sorensen had mentioned, but it's not uncommon to see something like this happen.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, as I think about grading, because water is always an issue. We talk about the 100-year storm is kind of that baseline, but we've all seen the last couple of years that I don't know if I've ever seen so much rain and the amount of flooding and things like that. So it's kind of hard to say, okay, what they based the 100-year storm on before is completely changed. But my point to that was the grading, you're bringing the road back and you're pushing all of that dirt to the back to try to build that grade up, but yet you're not doing the grading aspect. You're not doing the grading aspect, you're leaving it to the builder, and then things like that can get lost. So that would be a concern, because that's where things fall by the wayside, where a new developer comes in, they say, oh, I read it differently, and we've been to projects. So that's part of that concern for us from history, where it's helpful when someone's doing the whole thing. And Wally hit the only other, the buffer zone for footage, and you said 20 to 25, so you gave that answer.
yeah,
So-
we can try to better define that in a way that you can actually place it on the ground. And if I could, Mr. Chair, to speak to your comments there briefly. On the stormwater management, when I started my career, 20 years ago, I used to be able to go to a public hearing and say, nobody here has ever experienced a 100-year storm. We hadn't, and that was true until about 6 years ago. And we got walloped. And, I was in Salem, and they got like 8 inches in 3 hours. It's wild. Over the last, I'd say, 8 years or so, we've accounted for that in the engineering industry, and we've increased the precipitation that we're engineering for by over 30%. So we've really upped that to the current, and it's evolving constantly. It's now like a real-time update. We have to meet the current extreme precipitation data for our communities. And again, your engineer is going to look through all that and make sure that they're satisfied with it. So I just wanted to speak to that aspect.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had a question about the porous sidewalks. I was curious on why you chose to use them. Is it part of your stormwater management? And does it have any impact on what the curbing would be?
Great question. It doesn't have any impact on the curbing, which is, in this case, granite. We heard that at the preliminary phase, so we're going to have granite curbing. And it doesn't impact the stormwater, because we designed the stormwater system for it to be impervious. So we didn't even include it in the design. I don't feel there's a substantial cost differential there. And it just, again, we're trying to implement this wherever we can on our designs. Our house construction has to follow the current building code. And these homes are so efficient, we should be doing that with the site work too, so.
Thank you.
Hey, I missed this volume. I missed the sheet that did show the sidewalks, and I just heard the question on that. Could you, for me, just go over that, because I can't really go through the sheets here.
As far as a cross-section, like a detail, or the location?
So the sidewalk, because it's on the main street, goes all the way around the subdivision, right, and comes back out?
Yep, so we would start, I'll do my
Okay.
best to highlight. So we would do this between all the driveways.
Okay, got it. Yep.
down.
Got it, okay. All right, I'm following that, okay, all the way around.
That's the porous sidewalk section there. So it's about 600 feet of 5-foot sidewalk.
Yeah. And what's on the other side?
There's no sidewalk on the other side.
Why not?
Small residential road that we don't really.
On a
expect
residential
them
road
to-
on a state highway where there are sidewalks.
We do have a connection, a
So-
crosswalk across the frontage.
Well, may I suggest, since I was on the committee for sidewalks, that was one of our biggest things, folks were complaining, going through. And I know it's a small residential street, but if you're pushing a stroller, the kids are on bicycles, even though, and they're young ones, et cetera. If you've got a sidewalk on the main street, you continue the sidewalk all the way around. It's not a candy cane. Okay, and that's just what it was. Now, the option for that is this, and I know that's a milestone, and we've tried other modules with this before. We actually tried to put the sidewalk in the roadway on 3 subdivisions. As the house is sold, people didn't seem to know that was an actual sidewalk, and they started parking vehicles on it. So there's Pheasant Lane's a good example of that particular item. So I would suggest, and we'll review it with the board, that the sidewalk be continued on both sides, all the way around. Now, the other thing with that is that the amount of, I know it's a few dollars that goes in for the development for the sidewalk. One of the other things that we have done with that is the amount of money that was going towards the sidewalk goes for improvements on the land to each individual lot. So that's something you can revisit later, but because this is a state highway that you're off of, it would, we'll talk about it again with the board, but I feel that it should go all the way around the subdivision. The drainage system on this particular lot with the village behind it, and what the slope of the road, you said, was very minor coming in, but once you start disturbing the trees, one of the biggest things that we heard in the previous meetings was, and we've seen it on another subdivision, that once the tree line disappears, there's an awful lot of excess water that is no longer being absorbed by the tree line, that is up in places where it shouldn't, other residences, et cetera, et cetera. Have you taken a look at that at all yet?
We did do some initial sizing calculations for the primary sediment, forebay or pond that hold water. I'm certainly happy to present in a little more detail on that aspect of it. But this is part of a bigger stormwater pollution prevention plan that is required under your stormwater land disturbance bylaw and the EPA SWIP. And that in past subdivisions that I participated in town, your consultant, in this case, it's TEC, is part of those regular inspections and oversight. So this is not just
it's not necessarily the inspections. Once it's underway and the milestones are being built. I'm talking about the actual design.
Correct.
And we did see that, surprisingly. I will admit it was a surprise, where a relatively flat street. But what happened was the homes were pushed a little further back than originally, I think, designed with the drainage in this particular subdivision I'm thinking about. And it did cause some erosion and water issues because the tree line in the back was not, obviously, and there's not much tree on this property, it's mostly shrub and all. But once you start disturbing the land and other things, and then you have runoff, from homes, roof lines, et cetera, it may become an issue. I was just wondering, have you thought about that yet?
Yes, we have, and you raise a lot of good points, and it's a lot of things that we run into on every project. And I'm certainly happy to provide a little bit more color on that at a future meeting. But I think I think it would be beneficial to hear from your consultant first and make sure they don't raise
the designs up,
any other concerns. So I do it one time instead of multiple times, if I could be.
Oh, I think, I'm pretty sure the way that we normally do this, there'll be quite a few reviews going back and forth, which we really welcome between the engineers to get any issues worked out. Also, to the public, they're free to, write into the board if they have a question, which they're going to think about as soon as they leave the meeting. I forgot to ask that question. You can submit those to the board, and we will get those answers, and they go into the public record, etc. No matter how silly you might think the question is, we'll try to get it answered for the public, since that's who we work for, the citizens of Groveland. So, thank you for answering those questions. I'll just monitor from here.
You're very welcome.
Just a question on just back to the sidewalk issue. So understand that you intend it to be, for lack of a better phrase, that candy cane shape coming out and around and terminating on the back end of the cul-de-sac. It looks on the drawings that it does continue all the way around and then back out onto School Street on the other side.
Not as depicted here. I'll look at it. I want to look at the regulations, and I hear the comment and the request, so we'll definitely look into it and report back in the next meeting.
No, I think our question is, what is it looks like there's an outline that basically is the same as the other side.
Oh, I see what you're asking.
Yeah.
It takes me a couple times because I'm an engineer.
Oh, no worries at all.
It takes me a couple times because I'm not.
Right, we're lay people, so that.
Different languages. All right, so on this side of the street
Right, exactly
presently, yep. Presently, we just have this as a grass strip, which would contain your street trees all the way down. So this would just be lawn vegetated on that side. Yep, and it looks like what you're seeing is the edge of the right-of-way line and the edge of the pavement. And if I were to zoom in on this, oops, not that. If I were to zoom in on this a little bit so you can see it in more detail, again, 40 scale drawings are hard to read sometimes. We're zoomed way out. That's what the regulations ask for, so, which is typical. This is the sidewalk line here. So you see on this side, we have the line, these lines going across indicate the curb ramp coming down, and there's details for that at the end in the construction detail set, and that's all per town spec. So we would end the idea being we're taking the sidewalk, in this case, we took it here. I suppose, we didn't bring it to this driveway because in my experience with these small subdivision, even if you have sidewalks, nobody uses them because there's no cars on the road, frequent enough to warrant that. Off of School Street, numbered route, state route, we're going to take a look at it, and we'll report back to you at the next meeting. So we hear the concern.
Did, just out of curiosity, was it explored to have a sidewalk going all the way around?
It's my understanding, I don't, it may be wrong, it happens occasionally.
So
I believe it's only required on one side.
it's only required on one side, and all of the subdivisions that you recently approved, being Billis Way, which is also on a state highway, which is 113, and Katy Lane, all have the half sidewalk. They do not have the sidewalk that comes up fully around. So it has been historic, and it is per regulation that it only be required on on one side. You could do full side, it doesn't say that you can't, but it doesn't require it. It only requires half, and all of the other subdivisions that you've approved recently would follow that rhetoric.
Yeah, no.
I challenge that. The regulation is for a sidewalk all the way around. How they've been getting around that in certain areas, for instance, Katy Lane, as you mentioned, up off of King Street, because there was not a sidewalk that connected all the way up, was that a waiver was issued on that. That sidewalk, particularly on State Highway, is required on both sides. We'll look into that piece of the regulation. And like I said, one of the biggest things that we had during the town survey was not enough sidewalks for people to go on. And as a father of 3, I can tell you, I was pushing strollers on sidewalks, and any parent, with, you don't know what's coming down the street, and I don't mean the residents usually, the UPS guy, the FedEx guy, who knows, some guy making a wrong turn, the last place you want to be with an infant or young children is in the middle of the street. So I challenge that with any parent. And they may push back a little bit on your logic on that. But let's take a look at the sidewalk around on both sides. The planting strip has been eliminated, where you mentioned the shade trees. And for good reason, we do still have to have the 2 street tree shade trees but they're put into the lot. And the reason what's happening is if you put them in the planting strip, as they mature, they break up the sidewalk and it becomes unusable. So about 18, 19 years ago, we actually kicked them off the planting strip into the property. It looks better, to have 2 trees on each person's lot going in, and not in a planting strip, which will end up, or someone will end up, replacing the sidewalk, or it just becomes unusable when the tree roots get large enough. So just to keep that in mind as you're going through with those 2 things. I'm sure being this is, although it's a definitive plan, it's still really the first time that we're taking a crack at this. So all these little things will actually sift out, and I'm sure they will come into compliance without an issue.
Yeah, no, exactly. And not to belabor the point, like you said, I appreciate you taking the comment back and reviewing that. But, as someone who doesn't have a sidewalk in front of their house and wish they did, thank you for taking a look at that.
Sure thing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I have 3 young children, and it's always more convenient to have that sidewalk and the appeal of actually buying a home. But at the same time, I can see that extra yard as well, that frontage. But we'll look at it. So thank you.
Thanks for
Appreciate it.
feedback, yep.
Jason, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
No? Okay. Wally, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that's good for a first round. I think we've really, got a lot of missiles in the air on this thing to try to figure out, little things and sift them out for later. So, no, that's good for now.
Agreed. Thank you. So I think we have a scheduled meeting already again in the 24th, I think is what it is, in 2 weeks. Do you guys plan on being here for that as well? Yeah, okay. I just wanted to confirm the dates and stuff to make sure when we do have more questions as well. As we start to read, now that we've seen this, we can review it a little more in depth, knowing that we've answered some questions, and then
Sure.
it can all be via email as well, right? But at the same time, it's nice to go back to have the back and forth as well.
Sure, and I hope we get to hear a little bit from the public at your discretion, Mr. Chair. Just for the, I guess while we're talking about schedule, I suppose I'd be interested in seeing the TEC review before we come back again, just so that, to some extent, I feel like we spin tires a lot because you're guessing, I'm guessing, I don't know what the other engineer is going to say. So we can see that, we understand what it is. Perhaps I've responded to all of it and we've addressed it by then. I don't know, we'll see what comes back.
Understood. I believe the TEC is planning, it would be here well prior to the 24th meeting, and then we would be able to review that on the 24th.
Their memo is supposed to be issued by the end of the week, but in nature of the application, we want to continue the hearing until a certain date, as we're required under law. That necessarily would only give you a week to review, so I think
Yep.
that maybe if I may make a recommendation, Mr. Chair, is that I would say that you should continue to an October meeting and give the engineers enough time to go back and forth to make sure that they've addressed some of those comments and they get a chance to review some of those comments because they can be very technical in nature. But that's just my recommendation to the board through you, Mr. Chair, to see if that would be amenable.
Yeah, absolutely. The extra time.
I like that idea.
Yeah, the extra time for the engineers to talk through it, ours and yours, to be able to kind of hash things out, and especially from our side. That sounds good to me.
My staff appreciates it too, so they're not
Yeah, I
very
bet.
guilty.
Yes, I
Thank you.
agree. And like you said, well, I said, it's first pass through on all this, so
So does ours.
Sure.
we do have here.
Is there a,
Go ahead, Wally.
yeah, I was just asking, because we're on a definitive filing, and I'm assuming that we had an issue with the timing on this. I imagine they withdrew it and the time clock started this week for the 135 day. Is that accurate?
It started August 1st, which was the date it was timestamped by the clerk, so 135 days from August 1st.
Okay.
Because we did let the 7 months elapse on the preliminary, kind of by design, 'cause otherwise it would have been 90, but we have the full 135 for this, so the process kind of restarts.
Yeah, so
It does, but it was just a question for the board.
Wally, 135
Yeah.
from August 1st.
Okay, so keep in mind as this goes forward, if somebody remembers one of my emails that I sent to the board, was that I recommended that this be withdrawn and re-stamped, sometime this week before the meeting, exactly for that reason, because we lost 40 days about it. So keep in mind, we are now no longer running a 95-day clock. So at some point, to the developer, to keep things moving, we may require an extension. Obviously not today, but we are going to probably need one to keep the process going, so we don't run into any timing hiccups.
Yeah.
And if anyone wondered why I made that suggestion to the board for this filing, that was it. Because I knew this meeting was coming up, but once that clock starts, now we got to start asking for extensions, because you're right, these engineering reviews, everybody wants to put out a good product, and you don't want to rush it. And there's no way for engineers to discuss stuff. Even 2 weeks is a challenge, sometimes depending on what you guys are actually reviewing, and if you have to go out to the site and dig some holes or do something like that, it does take a little bit of time. And we want to give you all that time. So just somebody keep a mental note about that. That would be my own comment on that.
Yeah, and well, I'd say once we get back our TEC review, then we can go back and we can visit that and see where we're at.
Yep. I would like
Roger
to,
that.
yeah, I would prefer to keep the clock on. It puts us somewhere around mid-December is when that runs out. And as long as we're all moving forward in good faith and everybody's, we're working towards a completion, if we need another month, whatever, we'll sort that as we get closer to it. We're certainly not going to put the board into that position.
Well, it's something really, we do this all the time. Matter of fact, I haven't seen a single subdivision that was built well not require extensions. We actually prefer that. And of course, the board always acts in good faith when going through the stuff. It's just an easier process. It's no real skin off anybody's back to just ask for an extension. They're automatically granted pretty much. I haven't seen us reject any of them in 30 plus years. But it just puts everybody to get a nicer product. And you never know. Something might happen and just not even a week, and you don't want to rush it. So that's my only comment.
Thanks, Wally. We do have some letters here that came in later on, so they weren't part of the full packet, but they will be added in for the next meeting. From Groveland residents, local to, on Alyssa Drive, there's a couple here. From Don Soioni, I apologize if I said it wrong, Sioni is how I would typically say it, and then Joe Sacharowitz. The board all has these letters, so we will review these, read them through, and make sure we get some of these answers back to you guys, and it'll be publicly addressed. But with looking at the time, it's 8:10. I know that there is some news on tonight that I know people are concerned about getting to, so I want to open it up. Just keep in mind, if you want to stand up and ask questions to the developer, to Mr. Cameron, ask them directly. If you have one or two people who are going to speak for everybody, that is helpful too, because I know you probably all have the same concerns. So submitting letters is obviously always a good way to go, because we do read them. We'll have them here. I have in the past read through them to let the public know what these letters state, so people know everyone's concerned to be up to date. So I will do that when we have a little more time. That's kind of how I want to go through it now. So if there's someone in particular that would like to speak, ask some questions, I'd invite you, when you do go up, make sure that you announce your name and address. And then if you just speak clearly in the microphone, I appreciate it.
Yeah, make sure you use the mic up by the town administrator there.
Yep. Yeah, right up. Rebecca has a portable.
Okay, my name is Joe Shahovich. I live 1103 Alyssa Drive. You butchered my name. That's fine. I expect that everywhere I go. So I have a few concerns. One to the board directly, which is the percentage of pervious versus impervious. So I know that's on the plan, and I assume at this point that's acceptable, because I know we've been talking about the pervious pavers, and that type of product, which I'm familiar with, and, it sounds like overall a good plan. But it's, the town must have certain regulations for pervious versus impervious. And so that meets the standard, at least for at this point?
They do, and that'll be part of the TEC review to make sure when they look at the actual engineering design, they will make sure that everything is accounted for in the proper manner as well. Because we are not all engineers up here, but that's,
Yeah.
we rely on that, the TEC engineering report to come in. They will review this, that's why they need the extra time, the back and forth, to make sure that everything does meet our bylaws.
Would you prefer that I stand to, is that?
I'm okay.
Okay. So back to the pervious pavers, and we didn't talk about the driveways. The driveways, I believe, were going to be a pervious bituminous type of product as well. So I guess my question is, I know that they're gotten a lot more commonly used because of the tighter developments. We need to drain the water instead of having it run off for sure. And I know you're going to be, part of that construction process. And how well of it is proven over decades of time that it is able to remain in a pervious state. Because as you know, for my comment you'll see in the email is relative not to just us residents today in the village, but as we pass on the next generation and next generation as people and we're counting on the board to make good decisions as the steward of the land in Groveland. So it's not just for ourselves, but it's for others that follow. And I'm just not familiar with the longevity of the pervious pavers to be able to maintain the requirements that they claim at this point, which it is working. Just how long will that work? So I'm just thinking about a little bit later on in time. Is there an answer to that? Or?
Yeah.
Through the chair. That's a great question. Earlier on, when the technology came out and we started using it early 2000s timeframe, it was highly volatile. So even batch to batch from the same plant, you could have issues with it. As it's become more commonplace, we've gotten better at installing it. Typically for a residential neighborhood such as this with single-family homeowners who we want to make their stormwater management as maintenance simple and cost-effective as possible to basically ensure it continues to work for a long period of time. That's the idea with the rain gardens. They can let them grow wild, fine, let them grow wild. More roots, the better, they'll work better. With the porous pavement, we typically specify a larger aggregate, which has more pore space, void space in it. And while it is not going to be nice to walk on barefoot, it does hold up very well for a long period of time with no maintenance. And the thing to remember with this and why it's not in the street is the sidewalks and the driveways typically aren't going to be sanded. It's not common for single-family homes to sand it, and the sand is really where you start to get into issues where it will plug it up. And speaking from, I guess, personal experience, I have a family member who bought into a new development in East Broadway in Haverhill, and they did all the driveways and sidewalks with this porous pavement. I can assure you, this family member has never once maintained it, and they have stockpiles of loam when they're doing gardening and whatever. It still works great. I never see any water running off of it. So I'm confident with it, and the specs are in the plans on the installation. So there's some oversight and enforceability when we go to do the as-built at the end to ensure it was done properly. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's all about how it's put in.
Yeah, and the town's going to be bringing in an engineer to confirm, and so we're counting on that, of course. Again, on that, on the drainage, as you look at the plan, as I'm looking at it from my direction over to the left, is Building 6 of the village, and the topography, yeah, right in there. So you can, you over, yeah, but it's still the left of the property line right there. So there's, in the rear of the property itself, you're basically going to be building a berm that's going to keep any kind of overflow and keep the rain on the property. But over to that left side, I can see right where you're at right now that that berm you're going to be creating ends But right there, as you start to head towards the Route 97, the topography of the land still slopes down right into a little belly, if you will, on the Whitestone property. We have a little water problem there now, and it just doesn't seem like that berm has gone far enough to be able to maintain the water within the said property versus, ending up in the village.
Through the chair, just thank you for the feedback. We did look at this area closely, but I'll go out and have another look at it and see if there's anything else we can do to, ensure your confidence.
Yeah, and I know the board talked about the vegetation while he brought it up, and so that is one of the concerns we have is obviously, looking at a wooded lot is a much, more attractive than buildings, and so, we're looking forward to some vegetative plans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have as well, again, I have a question on the pervious. Did I hear that correctly, that the street and the sidewalk itself are going to be pervious, and that there's no closed catch basin system on this? 'Cause I can't see that sheet.
Sorry, just the sidewalks. No, the street is
Oh.
spec.
Okay, that's good. Just a board history thing. We looked at this. Actually, one of the first places that we looked at this kind of asphalt, which sounded like a really good idea, was up at the old high school and the middle school, and we were looking to get some of this in there to check it out. And there were two products that were out at the time. You might remember, the engineers might. One was called Glassfault, and it had recycled glass in it, which had actually kind of made it reflective in the evenings as headlights came off it. But we did a sample of it just to see how it would work. And the problem that we had is it does become clogged later in time, and it became impervious. And this is New England. And if you're going to put up a house today, which is, if they're selling, pretty close to 7 figures these days in certain areas, you can bet people are going to be throwing sand on their driveways and sometimes salt, on the sidewalks as well, because of the liability issues that go through that. So I would just caution not thinking at all that people aren't going to get out there with a spreader, or if they have their own landscape folks that will actually come in and sand and salt. So something to consider. We did look at this from a town's perspective with the road commissioner, a previous road commissioner, and it sounds like a really good idea, and it's wonderful for recharging the aquifers, underground aquifers, etc. But it did come up as a problem once you enter humans into it, which would be future homeowners and future residents and citizens of Groveland, because they are going to throw sand out there this is New England. Sometimes you get an ice storm. You don't think they're not going to. Now, I don't know the limitations of that, but just something to think about. The board can review that. And it may work in other subdivisions, but he is right. That over time those get clogged, and that's why we did not do those in the town of Groveland, because we were it sounded like a great idea, and we were gonna start doing a couple of sample roads with it, but in the winter around here we couldn't do it. So just a point.
Thanks, Wally. Someone else wanted to speak? Okay, good.
Hi, how you doing? Derek DeVoe, 181 School Street. About the roads too, he's talking about salting. Is this salted by the town, or?
It would be a public, eventually go into a public road, and that they would maintain the plowing and the salting.
Right, so if you're driving down with the truck, the salt's all over the sidewalk, right?
And
It's in my driveway, like 15 feet.
And the talks of the sidewalk would be a whole nother thing, yes.
Driveways.
Yep.
I have a concern, obviously, about the water. I talked about it before. This is my lot here. In this area, I have water buildup now. Got all the trees there. It rains, it's building up water. And it really concerns me with the runoff and how much water I'm gonna end up with in my backyard. Or, you know, like he says here, I've been down there and this is really bad in the back of there, right? I'm surprised it grows grass. But I'm really concerned about the water in my backyard, you know, and what is the distance from here to the road from my lot?
Which area?
Yeah, you're getting, like, where's the corner of my lot right there, right? What's the distance? Like, you guys are getting really close, and you said like 25 feet of coverage with trees, or did I hear that correctly?
Not in this area.
Right. So, you know, I got trees here now. This was already cut down before, which exposed my whole lot. And now you're talking about 25 feet, and, you know, we're getting really tight here
Yeah, that we're
next
good.
to my lot here and looking at the street and the development. So water and, you know, the 25 feet, I just don't see it. What is the distance like in this area, do you know?
So this is about 20 feet here. And then to your point, there are no trees through this area. This had been
Well,
cleared.
they got them all cut down, right? They weren't supposed to cut them down right next to my property. So that was a concern before, because they cut them straight from the whole area. And I think that was a problem before. So is there a regulation? I mean, with the road being that close to my property, I mean, what did you say the distance was right here?
There are definitely setbacks, that the road cannot be certain feet from your property line, yeah.
That's what I was concerned
And
about.
it's a difficult scale, right? That scale is.
That's why I wasn't sure, you know, what the actual distance at the shortest point actually is.
At the shortest point, it's about 4 feet at that pinch point
Right.
to the right of way. But the road itself is another 11 feet away, so you have about 15 feet to the actual.
But then you're gonna have the curb, right? So that doesn't really
That's the-
allow for any tree coverage or anything in this area.
Yeah, the curb is the street, it's considered the street line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the curb line is considered that
And
street
what
line.
is the?
It should be,
distance?
is it 15? I don't know off the top of my head. Is it 15?
It's about 15 feet from the
15 feet.
pavement itself. So there is space in there, and I appreciate the feedback, and
Yep.
I'll certainly get out and have a look at that area too, and see if there's anything we can do in that
Is
spot.
there, and then you're talking about an area maybe where you dig a hole. I've dug holes in my yard and it fills up with water and stays there for a long time. So, you know, the aspect of, you know, digging these holes and, you know, it fills up and then it overflows and, you know, it's just the water is a big concern in this area, and that's the biggest thing with me, really.
Yep. Oh,
Okay?
thank you. Thank you,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
This gentleman in the hat, yeah.
Hello, Rick Fitzgerald. I live on School Street, across the street from this new proposed development. And I'm looking at the plans versus the previous plans, which I think called for 6 single-family homes. Now, we've gone from 6 families to 8. So we have two families. And are these 2 families going to be affordable housing? I mean, does anybody know in terms of that? Like I say, we've increased the population on this street from 6 families to 8. There's 4 singles and 2 doubles, so now we have 8 families on there.
So Rebecca is much more versed in the affordable housing, but that's a state application that it would need to be applied for a 40B project, and this is not a 40B project, so it is not an affordable housing
Okay.
project. It would just be,
Okay. And sort of in defense of his setup with the sidewalk, I live on the opposite side of School Street for 33 years. I don't have a sidewalk. So, I mean, you know, they've got it on one side, I've got it on the other side. So just as a point, you know, I had to go across the street to walk my 2 children back and forth. I had no sidewalk.
right.
But yeah, I just see now we've increased the number of people on the street, you know, from 6 families to 8 in terms of that. So that's, you know, sort of a concern. And then the other side of it, which I'm sure, like, say, why couldn't the Garrison Street thing be put here? in terms of adult, but that's just a separate issue. But, okay, so like I say, I was just curious whether or not those two families would be affordable or not.
They're not.
They're not slated
They're-
for that?
Affordable housing is a 40B project, and that has
Okay.
not, there's nothing been submitted
Okay.
as a affordable housing.
And at some point, this will be given a street name?
Correct.
That's the plan?
It would be it would go to town meeting and would have to be submitted as a public roadway. It would be private until that happened, just
Okay.
like Billis Way on the 113. That
Mm-hmm.
was a private road up until last year, this year, I think, actually. Go ahead.
And Mr. Chair, just for clarification, while there's no affordable housing being proposed at this particular site, we do have an inclusionary bylaw where if you are going to subdivide more than 4 lots, you would be required to provide affordable housing. There is a payment in lieu that we've utilized with some of the other developments, that the developer does not necessarily have to provide the unit, but they can make a payment to our affordable housing fund to create affordable housing elsewhere in the community. So where nothing has been designated at this point in time through this process, there would be a requirement for the developer to abide by that bylaw. So just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Thank you.
If I could just respond to that, just briefly, just to clarify, the preliminary plan, which is non-binding, it's to get feedback, and exactly that's the purpose of it. That was 7 lots initially. We did scale it back to 6, but made 2 of them 2 families, so 8 homes.
So many, I couldn't tell,
Yeah,
couldn't remember.
hey.
It was at least 6.
Yes, so 8 verse 7. And to the point, so the inclusionary bylaw is kind of like the regulatory affordability with a capital A. So you have that as part of your zoning bylaw now that we'll be paying into. But as I mentioned in my presentation, the two-family, what I love about this are the two-family homes, because those are typically going to be more accessible to a larger buyer pool of young families rather than the single-family home. So it gives that family that might not be able to find a single-family home and that slice of earth that they can call theirs, that opportunity to do so. And I know it's only 4, and it's only 4 homes, two-family, but that would be more affordable with a lowercase a. So it's not affordable with a restriction, but it's more accessible to a larger buyer pool. So. And that's my kids, your kids, people my age having a hard time finding homes.
It is, yes.
Don Soini from 608 Alyssa Drive. If you could bring that down just a little bit, I'll just show you where I'm at. Yeah, I'm the one where the house is right there. Yeah, give me a different map. Yeah. I'm this unit right here. So as you know, the water's a big issue. But I'm wondering, right now I have trees. How far are these buildings going to be from there to the lot, do you know?
So the zoning dictates the minimum setbacks, and I want to call your attention to the setback table. So the zoning says that from the frontage, which would be the proposed road, 30 feet, and from the side and rear, 15 feet is the closest someone could build a home to the lot line. And this is the zoning bylaw. We have graphically depicted, again, our best guess at a large, it's a rectangle. We don't typically build homes in rectangles more often. But you can see this line is the 15 here, this dash
So from here to
line.
here is 15
That's
feet.
15, so you can kind of it's kind of the width of my cursor. So if we go 15, 30, 45, about 60 feet to how I've drawn that there.
So I'll have 60 feet from here to the stone wall that's there
To
now.
the stone, to the lot
And
line.
then what I got, which you could see in the other one's quite
Right.
close. There's an abundance of trees there now. Are they going to be able to clear all the trees out of there right up to their line? Or is there going to be any type of a regulation to where the trees are going to stay, so we'll have some privacy, some noise? And
So
these
if you're
trees are
looking right there,
planned.
that's that line, the squiggly line right there, that's the tree line that would be proposed. It
That
wouldn't,
they're going to put in.
no, it wouldn't, should already be existing, correct?
Yeah, it's our intention to preserve the trees in a 20 to 25-foot swath in this area.
All right,
of the
so
property.
everything from the stone wall in, 25 feet back, you won't touch. So we at least got that. There'll be no plantings of like on the rail trail where the horse farm was, they planted some nice, 15, 20-foot high evergreen trees to keep privacy and noise down.
Again, through the chair, I think we talked about better defining that, so I think that, the actual width and how we're going to define that and protect it is going to come through this process. We're going to go back in between now and the next time we see all of you, and I hope you all come out to the next meeting too.
I do too.
We'll have a better, understanding of what and how we're going to do that.
And just so I'm clear, I thought when you were making the presentation, you said that the footprints of what you've put on this diagram aren't necessarily the spec. So a builder could decide to move it closer to the boundary than what you have depicted, say, so long as it's within those things. But if there's going to be a tree line in addition to what would ordinarily be the setback, obviously you can't build a house, right abutting the trees. So I think it would be helpful at least to get a concept of what that tree line might look like, and so people can get a better idea of how far is this house going to be at a minimum to my place.
Yeah.
Even if there's some freedom to move the house around on the lot a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
like I said, I was going to make the same comment as well, just for this and any other questions we might have about where the house would go on each lot, down the road. That the houses on this plan are not the actual plan for the houses, so any questions about where the house would be in the lot line is really a non-issue at this point because we don't have any plans as to where the actual house would go on each lot. So just please keep that in mind.
All right, just to follow up then, I guess when you say proposed, that just means they could still take the trees down because you're only offering it out there. But there's not going to be no rule, regulation, or bylaw or anything that's going to say, it's for now on my plan, but it might not be there depending on who buys that lot and wants to cut those trees down.
We can
What
establish.
protects me?
We can establish a buffer zone through the planning board. We can establish our own town buffer zone that cannot be touched.
So in other words, somebody would be in violation.
Correct.
Even though they own that lot, if they were to go down there and cut those trees down.
Correct.
Right,
We've-
and that's why if Mr. Sorensen noted earlier that there would be markers placed down, denoting where the buffer zone would start and end.
Yep. So to your point, no, it is not a current law or regulation in the town. However, the subdivision control regulations that the board is following allows them to set covenants and restrictions as part of their approval process, and the developer
Contraire.
would have to.
I actually differ with that statement, guys, as well. It is well within the subdivision control law of the town of Groveland. I wrote it, okay, that the planning board shall determine a tree buffer zone. Okay, so you might want to
No, that's what he
step
said,
that one
Will.
back a bit.
That's what he said, Will,
Okay,
yeah.
so
He said that we do have that.
We can definitely do that. Okay, so that is part of the regulation. But a second question is this is you're pointing out, and thank you for the residents to point this stuff out, that this is exactly the scenario that happens when the lots get sold off and the person goes in and doesn't know, or in some cases may pretend not to know. Okay, and then a tree line comes down. So the tree line has to be established and shall be by the planning board with the markers and everything else that goes in there. And then the buffer zone gets added afterwards because there are things that do happen on a site, and you do have to, if you have to move a house here or there, okay, and then you go back in because you can have an established tree line and still be looking into somebody's window. So the board typically goes in with a double staked, tree line for some kind of buffer zone of hemlocks or something to that effect. And we've done that in the past almost on every subdivision going through. And that will eliminate that. And I completely understand the concerns of the residents, and remember, that's who we work for. But I did have a question that somebody actually touched on, which was the two-family. So although it's a good concept, and I completely understand that we need affordable housing in the town of Groveland, particularly for seniors, you're going to have an interesting time, and depending on the builder, and that's why I suggested you find one, going in, because if you're putting up a good-sized home that sells at 1.3 million, which could in the town of Groveland, and then you stick a duplex in that may not be up to that value, it's going to provide some interesting sales techniques, shall we say, in development in the neighborhood. So, and yes, the affordable housing, bylaw has been intact for about 20 years, and I'm sure you guys will follow that. It's a donation versus actually offering up a lot for the affordable housing. I don't think anyone's actually built a house since that bylaw's been in place. They donate to the fund. So, but keep that concept in mind. I think the board, we should take a look at that and discuss that. It does meet the requirements. If you have, and remember, for everyone involved here in the meetings here tonight, if this subdivision plan meets the regulation, it flies. Okay, that doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can do to help things along going through for the subdivision, to make sure there's buffer zones, et cetera, et cetera. But the two-family, we did see that concept before. In marketability, it didn't pan out. So I would like to see, you could present the board study on that. Not that we need to know all that stuff. I mean, you can do what you wish if it meets the regulation. But I think that's going to be an interesting time that you're going to have when you have a subdivision like this, particularly with today's market value.
Just for a moment, I'd like to go back to something that Rebecca said regarding the number of houses. There had to be 5 houses before they'd have to have, I thought she said 5. There's 4, and it had to be at least 5 before there'd have to be affordable housing. Is that correct?
The affordable, if you're putting in a duplex, it qualifies. I mean, it goes by lots.
Okay, because, I know previously there were 7, now there's only 6 buildings, but I thought something Rebecca said that it's mandated that there be some 40B housing if there's 5 houses versus 4.
No, not 40B housing, not 40B housing.
Okay, I'm confused.
The town of Groveland, the town of Groveland instituted in affordable housing bylaw. It's been in place for years. And so what we encompass is that the town does need that stuff. So what developers have, if you have so many lots, that triggers that. And typically what builders do, they could have the opportunity to build a house, but usually no one does. What they'll do is it's a 2-stage payment, once when the building permit is issued and the other one at the closing for the occupancy permit. And that money goes to the town of Groveland into the affordable housing fund, to which the town builds its own, or has the ability to build its own on certain lots that the town owns or plans for the future. So that's what it is. It's not a 40B project by any means.
Yeah, I wanted to reinforce that as well. Please keep in mind, this is not a 40B project. All right. So any mention of affordability for the housing, it's not associated with any 40B project.
And it was 4 lots in order to.
It was 4, not 5.
It was 4, yep. I did see, if you want to hold off, I did see someone online that had a question that just popped up. It was CPT Macero. If you just want to state your name and.
I think mine was before that, but I'll come back
sorry.
after.
I missed that one. I apologize.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Marie is online as well. Maria, if you just want to announce location.
Yeah, Marie Luca, 1404 Alyssa Drive. I live close to the property line in Western Village, the northwest corner of the map that's currently showing. Some of my neighbors who directly abut the proposed development already have water problems. I do not. So the 2 related questions are, if I do have a water problem resulting from this development, what is my recourse, especially since the developer and the builder are different entities? Do I go to the town, sue the builder, go after Mr. Cameron's PE license? What is the recourse? And number 2, what is your maximum limit on your errors and omissions insurance?
So, Rebecca, I'm going to defer, because I don't know the answer to
So
that
the
question.
liability of the development falls on the developer during construction. So if we're during construction and there's issues, then the property owner has every right to go after another property owner, which is a civil dispute and happens on a daily occurrence between neighbors, right and left. Once the lot is mortgaged and sold, again, the town does not own either of those properties. So it will never be the town that would need to enter into any legal battle between property owners. The issue comes into play is when the road is accepted and the townspeople through the vote of town meeting accept the roadway, and whether or not that roadway has any impact or direct impact on a private property owner. That is when the town would be involved. But anything in regards to the lot would be the developer during construction, and then unfortunately the homeowner once that lot is mortgaged and sold.
But the developer during construction is the builder. There are two different entities, the developer versus the builder. So are
It
you
still
saying?
depends on who owns the property.
Yeah, who owns the
If the
property?
developer owns the property, that's one thing. If it's the builder, then that's another.
So once the property gets sold or the house is built, if water comes on my property and my neighbors, you would sue the property owner, not the developer or the...
You would potentially have legal ramifications through the developer, but you would also include the property owner. So that would be a civil battle. It would not be something that the town would be involved in. So if that were to occur, then you would need to contact an attorney and follow the proper suit. But we're not in a position to provide any legal advice at this point in time.
I would imagine the developer is probably going to dissolve that particular company as soon as this development is done. You set up companies with the intention of doing a particular development. That company will be gone.
It still would be a matter for the developer and the property owner. It's not something that the town would be involved in.
And then the second question, what is your errors and omissions insurance limit? Mr. Cameron?
You're asking for what the insurance, what was that? I couldn't hear you.
Your errors and omissions insurance. So if you've done
I am
this.
insured. I guess I don't feel it's appropriate to be talking about that at a public meeting, but I am insured. I've never had an issue in 20 years of practice.
Okay, so you don't want to answer. So if our property is flooded and we try to come after you, you will not tell us what the amount would be. I just want that to go on the record. That is very scary, and I think all of my neighbors and all of the people who are surrounding this development should be very, very concerned. We already have water problems, and I am certain this is going to be extra. Thank you.
The requirement for the board as well, the requirement for the filing and for the subdivision is that the developer and contractors provide the liability insurance to the town of Groveland, which is on file and that's public record. Okay, so that will be and should be into the package which is available. As far as the regulations, just the zoning regs say that you can't flood out someone else's property, putting it basically. Okay, and we go to extremes on this to make sure, and this is one of the questions that I asked early on, that we will be looking at this because sometimes things happen later on. It is the developer's responsibility if that's where that came from, and it can be determined that way. During the construction process, it is the towns will supersede, oversee that and make sure that doesn't happen. Should it happen in the future, Rebecca was correct if it's 5 years, 10 years down the line. But during the construction process, and we've had these issues, and the town, meaning the planning board, has jumped on it with its engineers when catch basins don't work properly, when something is grass the way it should be for erosion control, and we do have them go back in and they do address it. So don't think that we're sleeping at the switch on this stuff, particularly with water. We are not, and we're on it. And we'll be making site visits, and our third-party engineer will also be going out there and checking this. And that is one of the concerns, and it's not intentional. I can assure you that this developer or any other developer doesn't intentionally go out to say, let's flood out neighborhood X. It just sometimes things happen, but there's also solutions to those, and engineering wise or other things that we can do to mitigate that once it goes. And during the construction process is where you may see some of that. If once the land starts getting disturbed, that's usually when we starting to see some of the areas receive water. So we'll be on it. And the liability insurance is part of the application, so that'll be filed with the town. I hope that answers that question.
That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Thanks, Wally. Yeah, and I've only been here 3-4 years, and I've already done site visits myself. So we have definitely something we do when we hear of stories of residents coming in and say, "Hey, this is going on. We see water. It's still being developed in the entire subdivision." We go out and we'll take a look at it, and as well as our town officials do the same thing.
And remember, in this particular project, it had been submitted a year ago, and water was one of the big concerns, and so that was something that, has been revisited and is already, in the back and forth between developer and the board.
Yeah, and I was going to make a point of that as well, just for, for everyone's sake of mind, and for any future questions they might have. Water is certainly a concern. We understand your concern about it. It's also one of our bigger concerns, if not our biggest concern for this project. So please know that is foremost in the board's mind right now as to what that water impact would be, what that drainage would look like. Certainly, one of the major things we have our peer consultant reviewer going through as well. So please know that is something that we're seriously concerned about, and we're working very diligently with the applicant on this as well.
We know how difficult the water is in our own properties, so we know how, and it's even worse in other places. TEC, when they come in, they look at all of these elevation levels and they say, okay, this is what you have here doesn't work. That's why we have that peer review with TEC. So that's why we kind of wait on their feedback as engineers professionally to their guidance. So hope that helps a little bit. Thank you, Marie.
Captain Mazzaro had a question as well, right?
Yeah. Captain Mazzaro, you there?
Yes. I had a couple questions about the road itself. Just in the last meeting that we had, you were concerned about fish. I think you called it not fish, rat tailing on some of the lots.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this was addressed earlier. It came in a little bit late, but it does look like a couple of lots are still rat tailing, and I think the angle of the road is causing that a little bit. And then on top of that, too, with the angle of the road coming onto Route 97, which is a very busy street in itself, do you really want to have that type of an angle for people to turn on and off of a neighborhood road? And then the proximity of that to-be-named road to other side streets, such as Ann Street, which I'm sorry, 4 Ann Street myself. So I do find some concerns with just having another road so close to other side streets at that angle coming off of a main road, and then creating, again, some of those rat tails on a couple of those lots.
So we did talk about the distance between streets earlier. That is one of the waivers that is going to be discussed, of dropping it from 400 to 300 feet. The 300 feet is the same distance from Ann Street to Georgia Street. So the distance-wise, it meets those, looks at that same uniformity. But we will review that. As far as the way that the street is set up, if you're coming in from the Ann Street side and then exiting, I think the exiting from street to be named onto School Street is actually, for me, I think it's a nice layout because it has that open corner. But it's definitely something we'll review.
If you're exiting that street and you're turning right, I mean, that's a sharp angle to turn right on. And if you're coming from the Georgetown side of 97 to turn left onto that road, I have a hard enough time turning onto Ann Street, which is just a 90-degree turn at times during rush hour.
Agreed. It's a tough street. Again, I think when we did the traffic study, it was only 75 cars max and it wasn't an
Well,
extended amount.
I mean, I left for work this morning. I go through Georgetown to get to 95. I leave for work this morning, and there's traffic from Ultimate Perk this morning all the way to the light in Grove in Georgetown. There's a ton of traffic on that road.
If I could, maybe, Mr. Chair, speak to it a little bit. Graphically, the right-of-way does align on an angle. It meets the subdivision regulations. That is a requirement we have to engineer to, so we're well within that angle to the main road. But one thing we did do, and I didn't talk about this in the presentation, so I apologize for that, but we did actually engineer it so as a car approaches School Street, the car actually angles to a 90 degrees. So for the experience of the operator exiting the neighborhood, they're going to be exiting at a 90 degree to School Street. So it's just kind of it's just how we worked with the curb lines and the striping and the stop control signage at that spot.
Okay, thank you.
Hey guys, well again, the traffic study will be done on this from an exit point, okay, and Ann Street and Georgia Street are older streets that came in. So the requirement today is what's present. I heard the word waiver on a line of sight distance. Do you have a list of waivers that you're submitting in this application?
Not line of sight, Wally, it's intersection waiver. It's
Intersection, okay.
Yeah, it's
But it's
the
still a
the
waiver.
line of sight exceeds, so we're good on line of sight. It exceeds that limit, but it's just the actual intersection to intersection is the waiver that would be proposed.
Okay, so we should look into, and thank you for that. Are there any other waivers on this list? Because usually that's a requirement too, you have a waiver list.
It's the one about the permeable sidewalk.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Just those
So
are
just
the
two?
two waivers.
Okay, so that's something we'll go out and take a look at, and I agree. I mean, just pull up the Merrimack Valley traffic counts, and, 97 gets anywhere from 10 to 15,000 cars a day. And Salem Street is another surprise, which is why that set of lights appeared in the town of Groveland, because of the amount of traffic. And it is a problem. And we all know about the problem going down in Georgia with trucks and everything else with the one-ways and people that aren't supposed to be down there. And of course, that's a bigger project. But traffic is clearly a concern that we're aware of. And we will be getting out there and taking a look at that and always do what's best for the residents of Groveland on that. Because we may be turning out of that street, might be doing an inspection and come out, and you need to have what you need on that. So we'll take a look at that, but it will be part of the traffic study count. And I know there's data that's been provided, but we'll take a look at the other stuff.
Thank you.
One more question, please.
Absolutely.
You've been patient.
All right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. I'm Diane Caravan. I'm on Diane Circle in a butter, and I'm going back to the water situation. First of all, I would like to ask you whether or not the catch basins are installed at the time the road is built, or if each one becomes the project of the individual builder for the lot that they are on, so that we're then relying on several different people to carry through with this idea. And if they are to be built by individual builders, that would leave no plan for the water runoff during the time that those lots are not developed, but the street is there. Second part of that question is, I don't believe I see a storm drain in the pavement on that road. Now, in my neighborhood, we have several of them around, and they're quite effective. They, I believe, drain into the town sewer system. Is that not something that makes sense for this design?
Good. Go ahead, I'll let you take it.
Great question. Thank you. And through the chair. So the first part is what we spent a good amount of time talking about, is how a decision is going to be conditioned to guarantee that the developer, in this case, Groveland Redevelopment LLC, Mr. Loth, who spoke earlier, constructs the road so that it is functioning as intended in the design and reviewed by the town and overseen during construction by the town and consultants, is functioning prior to a milestone, which is typically issuance of a building permit to construct. So before a builder can even put a foundation in, typically the road has to be to a level of completeness, so that that situation doesn't happen where you have an incomplete road, and there's a whole lot of law behind that as well on what constitutes frontage to qualify for building permit. So you have to have a constructed road to have access to the site. Even during construction, you need to have emergency vehicles enter in situations, so you have to have a road with frontage to build your lot. With regards to the stormwater management, yes, there are catch basins proposed in the street, and I'll walk through quickly because the peer review consultant is going to cover this as well. But if you look at the screen as you come up, there's a set of catch basins here, right at the end of lot 6, to intercept water coming down the road here. So gutter line, granite curb with the catch basin, which you mentioned you're familiar with.
Excuse me, what you're saying a catch basin is the grate in the road?
Yep.
Okay, just
That allows
making sure
water.
I'm clear on your terminology. Thank you.
Yeah, the little letter CB, that's the catch basin where you would see the storm
Hard
grate, the
to
storm
read.
grates.
Hard to know what
Yeah,
you're
it's
looking at
it's
here.
it's
Thank you.
tough.
Yep.
There we go. I know, I'm moving
Okay.
quick. I only had half a cup of coffee before the meeting. So we have these catch basins, and as part of our design work, we look at the type of grate, the size of the grate, to make sure that the water that we intend to go there is all going into that.
Okay.
In the event that, let's say it gets blocked, and whatever,
So it's
leaves,
being
things
channeled
happen,
to
right?
those before it gets all the way to the end.
Correct. So, but let's say something happens. Let's say, I don't know, a kid puts a piece of plywood on it. I don't know, stuff happens, right? We planned for that. There's another set of catch basins a little further down the road, right here. So there's four. And then as you go all the way to the end, there's another one, and this is actually a bigger one. This is a double. So this would be the end of the road, and I'll zoom out slowly so you can see where it is. That's Whitestone here. So there's 1, 2, 3 interception points to get the water off the road, and all the house lots. So all the house lots too. And then we also designed it so that the road for this whole area, pretty much, if you think of from the center line, pretty much the roofs to the rain gardens, all this, all drains to the road. The road is your low spot. So let's say all the catch basins don't work. The road would have a foot of standing water in it before it then goes to the retention pond, which would be, it's highly improbable that would ever happen. So we've put a lot of thought. We heard it during the preliminary process, which helps a lot. That's why I like this process. So we did put a lot of effort into that, and you're not going to take my word for it. The town's engineer is going to review this, and we'll make sure that this, we have a group of engineering folks on either side of the table that are looking this on your behalf as well.
And the rain gardens that are part of this plan are on the individual building lots?
Those are on the lots, and my expectation is that part of the same covenants we're talking about with the trees would also encompass the requirements of the lot owners on these rain gardens as far as maintenance and ensuring they continue to work long-term.
But it would be up to the builder who builds the house on that lot to follow through with that plan.
We're gonna work on that. That's that part of that earlier conversation of the development of it. As it stands now, yes, that's how it would be, but we as a board know that we need to work on something like that.
Okay, and I would also just like to quickly add that being in a location where I have seen the buildup of the land behind me from a different project, channel the water in a different direction than it used to go in, that buildup, that berm, can work in both directions. So I now have more water coming onto my property.
Water
being
is
on
the
the other side of the berm.
least path of resistance. Water likes to
I know,
travel.
of
That's
course.
just how it, yeah.
But,
So you're right, it'll go any which way, the easiest way it can.
yeah.
It'll make
it's
a
gotta
little
be
gully and get there.
Graded properly to, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we've had that before, that we've had developers go back in and redo landscaping because of that.
Hi there, I'm Jess Mastro at 4 Ann Street, and I know we want to get out of here, so I appreciate your time and attention to this. I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, so I'll make this beginning on, I think that's drawing C5. I do have overall concerns with the bioretention landscape feature, with the basin and the infiltration to the ground. We currently have, we are just a steep downgrade from there, and we already have water that comes out sideways from our retaining wall in our backyard. So I know there's more thought going into that, but currently there's large issues. I teach elementary school, so I do have a 5-paragraph essay to read to you, and I apologize, but I'm better at talking at children. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I stand before you not just as a concerned resident, but as somebody deeply invested in the character and future of our beloved town, Groveland. 5 years ago, my husband and I carefully chose Groveland for its unique blend of greenery and space, qualities that are becoming increasingly rare as other towns give way to the rampant overdevelopment. That's why we moved up here. The proposal before you, the proposal to cram these 8 housing units into this lot is not only alarming, it's also a direct threat to the fabric of our community. This is a small, tightly knit neighborhood characterized by these single-family homes that sit on modest, well-retained lots. And the idea of squeezing these 8 units into this acreage is really just utterly out of step of the character of our current neighborhood. It's not just about adding a few homes. The scale of this development just doesn't align to what we're currently living and loving. It goes beyond just talking about more traffic or a few extra cars on the road. We're talking about fundamentally altering the nature of our neighborhood. The charm of Groveland lies in these open spaces and the privacy that each of us enjoys from the peace that comes from living in this community that values these attributes, and that's what we're thankful for. This development would not only disrupt this balance, but it would directly damage it. And obviously, let's not forget about the environmental impact to the area and to these individual homeowners like myself. Most of us, I know, have already invested a nice chunk of change in expensive draining management systems to combat the current issues of waters on our property. And despite the developer's reassurance, adding more impermeable surfaces, roads, driveways, sidewalks will only worsen the flooding issues that we are already grappling with. The stormwater management plan may meet regulatory requirements, but it does nothing to alleviate the very real concerns that we have about the potential for increased water damage to our homes. Furthermore, just the general need of waivers, whether it's reducing the intersection distance or the permeable pavement, I think it just signals that this development is being forced into a space that simply cannot handle the associated values and the sizing that goes against the spirit of what Groveland represents. It's just more of a compromise of our town's values for the profit of a developer. To wrap it up, the proposal really represents a clear departure from what Groveland stands for, the current neighborhood we get to live in. It prioritizes the density over the quality of life and a lot of short-term gains over long-term sustainability. I urge the board to carefully look at this plan, not just for the sake of the current residents, but for the future of Groveland residents as, again, the peaceful, spacious, green community where our young families can continue to love, thrive, and grow. So, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Time for one more? Good time?
Hey, just one comment to that. Do we, a wonderful statement, do we have a copy of that at the board, just to put it into the record? Or can we get one?
She's going to email it to us. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And we do have time for more questions. If everyone can grant us, I am going to make a motion for a brief recess, and then we can reconvene in like 2 minutes. But we will have time for any public comments.
I won't talk about water, I promise.
No.
I just cramped up during that talk. I was like, whoa.
Let's say, so.
Hey, just a point of order. I think we're coming up on hour 2.
2, yeah, into 3.
Yeah. So and so I would make a recommendation to the board. The typical subdivision hearing goes 45 minutes. and not that we're gonna, you wanna shut things down, but you should continue this for the input, and, because you can go late on these. And there is an important thing with the country, I'm sure other people want to see tonight, that's going on. So if you, I can't see the agenda from here, so if,
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
if you have a few more questions.
Hey, Wally, sorry to cut you off, and I'm not concerned about going over time. I just need a 2-minute break.
Okay.
All those in favor of.
Go get a 2 minute.
Make a motion.
Yeah, unanimous. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Yeah, go.
Thank you.
No, go ahead,
Yes,
please.
yes.
No, I don't want to use it.
Yeah, it's for the
I
public.
don't like hearing myself. It's weird.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying, so you mentioned that I went through this pretty thoroughly, and I saw something about house height, but I don't understand the numbers. Can you explain something to me? I saw something that said less than 30 or greater than 30. I don't know the symbols too well. I went to public school.
Fair enough. And thank you for speaking tonight. I know I do this. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I know it's hard.
Yeah.
So this table is probably what you picked up on, and what we're documenting here. I believe this is sheet C5. Yeah, sheet C5. And again, through the chair. Sorry, I'm
You're good.
responding through
You're
the
good.
chair to
You're good.
him.
Yep.
The building height that zoning allows is 35 feet. So
Okay.
that's you, us, anybody in the zoning district can do 35 feet in height. And what the rest of these say is the caret pointing to the right is greater than 30 feet. So we don't have, this is what we're saying, we don't have house designs yet. We don't have architectural. That's something that is down a ways, probably
Right.
6 months
So
out.
that's concerning, because
So-
if you're adding 30 feet up on a hill, and my house and her house are 30 feet below that line, you're adding a 60-foot house in my backyard. We both have swimming pools with small kids. I don't need people in windows in a watchtower looking at me and watching my wife and kids. It's weird. And I think anyone can agree. So I think you need to take into, they're going to be two-story houses, I'm assuming?
Yeah,
That's what the majority of houses are now.
again, through the chair, they would comply with zoning.
Yeah.
So the same right that you have here. But what I will do a couple things. I'm going to, based on the feedback I've heard tonight, there's a couple areas I'm going to take a second look at.
I invite you to come. Come knock on my door. I'm at number 6. You can come in my yard. I'll show you.
Okay, I'll be
It's
sure to knock on the door.
You'll look up at the trees. It's
Yep.
crazy.
This is an area where we're talking about that tree buffer through this area. So that would be on top of the hill, and then we would be set down. So if I look at the contours here, this house, we're putting a garage at 96. And 96 is the contour in your back right corner. And I don't have detail here, so it sounds like it drops off a little bit to your yard.
Yeah, it does.
But there's effectively from 96 to 104 between your house and that house, so there's an 8-foot, the hill keeps going up 8 feet before you even see it. So the sight line, I don't know if it would be as drastic as what it looks like on the plan. The plan always looks a lot more than what it is, but I'll be sure to head out there, and if there's I don't know if you're home during the workday or if there's a good time, I drive by this every day.
If you see a pickup in the driveway, I'm there.
Pickup in the driveway?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I'll try to keep an eye out for that.
All right. I think the last meeting, I invited all you guys the same thing. Come walk our lots, and you'll see. It's a yard's a hill. We have a small patio with pools, and then a huge hill. So if you add 20 feet past my fence line, I'm going to be looking to someone's bedroom window. And they're going to be looking down on me and my children.
So, and as you look at that tree line, right, so the back tree line is 104 feet in height, and then the home would be back down to 96 feet. Now,
So that's not a set plot, though, right? Because
Correct.
the builder can decide to do what he wants. That's
Well, subject to
concerning.
things like setbacks and those sort of
Setbacks,
things.
yes.
And there's going to be a buffer zone that we're talking about also. So
Yeah.
those two things also are happening.
But as far as grade, the house is lower than where the tree line would be, and it would sit higher. Is that the house level would be at 96, and then the tree line level would start at the 104 and then go up from there. But I am definitely going to take a ride by all of this area and take a
Yeah.
look, so
sure.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
I'll look at the grades of your lot too, I can get that information, so I'll look at that. Thank
yeah,
you.
I think-
And the other ones too, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you, we'll take you
Yeah,
up on.
thank you, I appreciate
we'll
it.
take you up on that.
Thanks for taking the time. I know it was a long time to get to you. We really appreciate it.
I have some of the water. No, the water is a concern too.
Yes.
Understood.
Pool's flooded a couple times. I have French drain, not everyone does. So that's.
We're gonna-
that's
yeah.
what people are going through, right? To
Yep.
prevent the
I think
current
the
water.
biggest advantage to the water is, and now you're gonna have a development that's gonna try to deal with the water. Versus,
trying to put it back in that hill though, and that's what's coming through my retaining wall.
Right.
All of that water.
And that's what we'll look at, we'll make sure. It should all be coming down, that's the point of this, is to bring it all down from anywhere in the backyards to the middle, and hopefully reduce that what you currently have.
Right.
Through the chair, just so I can indicate, could I, mind if I ask them a good time? I do drive by to and from work, so are you home in the evenings? If I try to, if I see the cars there, just pop in?
I'm not. I work a rotating schedule.
So days would be better, so I'll hit you on the drive-in? Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Pissarro, if you send the email, send your contact information.
We'll reach out.
We can
Got it.
forward it, and then you
Take a
can
look
kind
at
of
it.
contact from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if she tells you, if you plan something with her, I'll make sure I'm home that same day.
Cool.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you both.
All right.
Any other questions?
We're good, welcome.
Yes.
And,
Oh,
Linda,
One more, yeah. This is Linda Tomaselli, 1007, Alyssa, and I'll be very brief.
no, of course.
Could you please zoom out on the first page of the subdivision plan? Just in general, I'll say that I do share the many concerns about water and drainage, and I'm also quite surprised, actually, to see that the new plan actually calls for more intense development and therefore probably tree clearing, et cetera, than the first one. It is definitely a concern. But what I want to point out just briefly is that if you take a look at this picture, the top of the parcel at issue, during the early part of the presentation, Mr. Cameron said, and I believe his words were, "There are no buildings there." That is actually not true. There are several white stone buildings. If you move that cursor down a little bit, yeah, right about there, there are at least 3 buildings with multiple units. And we've talked about the fact that the grading from School Street back to Alyssa is steep. And at the back, at Alyssa Drive, there's also a drop-off, kind of a cliff. The back of this parcel effectively abuts Alyssa Drive, very, very close. And Alyssa is fairly narrow. So those buildings are all at risk if there is any kind of drainage problem, particularly groundwater. So I just want to make sure that people are fully aware of that. Those on the planning board maybe get a chance to see it firsthand, and certainly your consultants, TEC. I really don't want anyone to have the misimpression that there are no other buildings within Whitestone at risk, because there are several. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Quick clarification on that, and thank you for the feedback. And if I misspoke or didn't state that properly, I didn't intend to say that there are no homes here. I understand there are homes here. What my intention was is the road is here and then the homes. So we're not directly abutting up to the backyard of a dwelling. So there's a little separation there. And yes, I fully anticipate we'll go through the technical review process with TEC to qualify that.
There's actually quite little separation. So anyway, thank you.
It looks like three buildings that aren't on this map, in that sort of gap between the two that sort of face one another at the end of Ann Street, and then the one behind Lot 10A. So there are like 3,
Yeah.
in the real world, there are 3 additional buildings there.
Yeah. There is actually an aerial view that I got a copy of during the preliminary hearing. I can't figure out exactly how I got it, other than I think Annie Schindler sent it to me. You probably have it in your files somewhere, and it gives a much more accurate view of the white stone buildings and how they would be affected by this.
Sure. Thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you, appreciate
Thank
it.
you, appreciate it.
All right, entertain a motion to close public.
Well, I'll make a
No?
motion to continue the public hearing on the 181R School Street until, did we set the date? We said October
October 1?
1 is the Tuesday?
That's the first.
October 1st, but you have a meeting scheduled for September 24th?
I would say a little after the first is going to be tight.
So would you want to move it to the 3rd?
The 15th, that's our next, we have it scheduled for in October, we have the 1st and the 15th.
15th would be
scheduled.
All right. I'll make a motion to table the public hearing for 181 School Street to,
Continue.
sorry,
Continue.
Thank you. Until October 15th.
Seconded.
So motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we need to do roll call?
You do need a roll call.
Roll call, okay. Roll call of continuing the public hearing until October 15th.
Patrick Molina, aye.
Chris Goodwin, aye.
Dennis McNulty, aye.
Jason Aves, aye.
Paul Sorensen, aye.
So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you
Appreciate your
guys.
time tonight.
Thank you guys both very much, appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Motion adjourned?
No, we got more. Still got others.
Okay.
they should be-
I'm gonna have to depart the hearing. I am not US based at the moment, so,
Okay,
onto that, I will regroup on that. Just somebody send me the update. I think it was a great meeting. I'm glad everybody put a lot of input in, on that.
Next
So
one's
I'll
right
just,
up,
bow
next one's
out.
right up your alley, Wally. Has to do with the approval.
Oh, yeah, what is it?
The approval of species of trees, the subdivision.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
On second.
Awesome. Yeah.
106
I will
King.
reserve my vote, but I'll look at the input.
All right, 106 King Street, Katy Lane, approval of species of trees for the subdivision in accordance to the subdivision rules and regulations, Article 5, Section 12A.
How we doing?
Good, how are you?
How are you?
Hopefully I'll be brief. Yeah. Thank you for your patience.
So we have 33 trees that are going to be put in on Katy Lane. So the trees are on the back side of the sidewalk, so approximately 8 to 10 feet on the back side of the sidewalk. So we're proposing
I think that might.
20 red maples.
Kevin.
Your mic on?
How's that,
Thank you.
better? 20 red sunset maples, 5 red oaks, and 7 sweet gums. So I went over the trees after I spoke to Annie. I went over it with Bill Green on the highway department, and he is in agreement with them all. They're all strong, hardy trees. He's concerned about the canopy closing in on the street and the street being able to be plowed and all that. So he agrees that these are all good, strong, high trees. So
Sounds good. I did follow up with Annie as well. She spoke to me about it, so everyone was in agreement for the town, so make a motion.
So we're hoping to plant them next week is what the plan
Awesome.
is. So,
That's a good time to do it.
yep, yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed species of trees for 106 King Street, Katy Lane.
Second.
Species and number, correct?
Yes.
Species and number.
There's a total of 33 trees going in, so it's approximately every 45 feet up and down each side of the street. If there's any change in the species, I will go over it with Bill and let Annie know what's going on.
Okay.
But right now, it's kind of about what's available, what's around, you know what I mean? So this is basically what I've nailed down at this point, so.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's the understanding, as long as they're solid, hardy trees and they're not invasive, kind of.
Yep.
Yep. Excellent. So a motion was made, seconded?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh. Aye. So moved.
Awesome. Do we need
Awesome.
good?
Thank you. 929, 931 Salem Street project update. Do we?
So we received a email from the contractor stating that they are waiting to finish the steel top deck and that Comtank is starting their work. So they cannot finish the top until they finish what they're doing. You will see the TEC report dated 8/15/2024, and that's in the new materials packet. We had thought it would have been included in your former packets, but it had not, so there's an updated TEC for review for your review. And Sam has been, or the building commissioner has been working with the contractor and the owner on coordinating the canopy for the gas pumps, which has still not been pulled yet, so they are working on that.
Excellent, thank you. You guys have any questions on that? No, just an update.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Did you have anything, any other items not reasonably anticipated?
No, I did not.
Okay. The next meeting, September 24th, and before we do adjournment, I know that we spoke, but all these materials, there's a lot of stuff here for 181 School Street, so if you want to take it home, that's fine. Please take care of it, bring it back, because it's going to be difficult to reprint. If not, leave it here, and he will hold it and can always grab it. All right? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 9:33 PM.
Second.
Sorry, 9:28 PM.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded, 9:28. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Thank you, everyone.